The message came at 3 in the morning, Earth time. It traveled across the black emptiness of space for 17 days before it reached the Galactic Relay Station. The station floated at the edge of human territory, a small metal structure filled with machines that listened to the universe. Ambassador Yuna was the only human awake at that hour. She sat alone in the communication room, drinking cold coffee and watching the screens. Her job was simple but important. She listened for messages from other species and sent them to Earth. Most nights were quiet. Most nights, nothing happened. But this night was different. A red light flashed on her console. Yuna put down her coffee and leaned forward. The computer was receiving something. The signal was weak and broken, filled with static and noise. She worked quickly, adjusting the machines to make the message clearer. After 10 minutes, she had enough to begin translation. The message was not in any human language. It was in Valari, the tongue of a peaceful species that lived far from Earth. Yuna knew some Valari. She had studied it during her training. She recognized the words for help and please and dying. Her hands began to shake. She worked faster, pulling the full message from the static. When she finally played it back, she heard a voice. It was old and tired and full of fear. The voice belonged to Elder Veth, the leader of the Valari people. To any who hear this message, the elder said, we send our desperate plea. Our world is burning. The Drath Collective has come to our system with 300 warships. They are destroying everything. Our cities are gone. Our people are hiding in caves and tunnels, but they are finding us. They are killing us. There was a pause. Yuna could hear explosions in the background of the recording. We have no army. We are healers and teachers and farmers. We cannot fight this enemy. The Galactic Council has refused to help us. They say it is too dangerous. They say the Drath are too strong. The elder's voice broke. We understand. We do not blame them. But we must try. We must ask. Another pause. When the elder spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. To any who remember our friendship, to any who remember when we sent our ships to help during the Great Plague, we ask now for the same kindness. Please, we are dying. Please help us. The message ended. Yuna sat in silence for a long moment. She remembered the Great Plague. Every human remembered it. In the year 2287, a terrible sickness had swept across Earth. It killed millions of people in just a few months. Human doctors could not stop it. Human medicine was not enough. Then the Valari came. They crossed the galaxy in their small ships, carrying medicine and knowledge. They asked for nothing in return. They worked beside human doctors for 2 years, teaching them, healing the sick. By the time they left, the plague was gone. Humanity survived because of them. And now they were dying. Yuna sent the message to Earth Command with the highest priority code she had. She added a simple note. The Valari saved us. Now they need us. On Earth, it was morning. The message reached the headquarters of the United Earth Defense Force, just as Admiral Kang Tae was starting his day. Tae was 63 years old, with gray hair and a face full of scars from old battles. He had been a soldier for 40 years. He had fought in 3 wars. He had seen terrible things and done terrible things in the name of protecting humanity. But he had also seen kindness. During the Great Plague, Tae was a young captain. His wife was sick. His daughter was sick. The human doctor said there was no hope. Then a Valari healer named Solus came to his home. Solus worked for 3 days without sleep, mixing medicines and watching over Tae's family. On the 4th day, his wife opened her eyes. On the 5th day, his daughter smiled. Solus refused any payment. We are neighbors in this universe, the healer had said. Neighbors help each other. Now Tay watched the message from Elder Veth. He watched the old leader beg for help while his world burned. He watched and he remembered. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting that same day. Representatives from 30 species gathered to discuss the situation. The Drath Collective was powerful and dangerous. They had conquered 47 species in their long history. They took resources. They took slaves. They destroyed anyone who resisted. The council voted to remain neutral. They did not want war with the Drath. They offered prayers for the Volari, but nothing more. Humanity was expected to vote the same way. They were a young species, only 300 years into space travel. They had a small fleet, small territory, small influence. Fighting the Drath would be foolish. It would be suicide. Admiral Tay stood before the United Earth Assembly that evening. The Great Hall was full of leaders and generals and politicians. They all watched him, waiting to hear what he would say. Tay was not a man who made long speeches. He believed that actions spoke louder than words. So he spoke only 5 words. They saved us. We go. The assembly erupted in noise. Some people shouted in agreement. Others shouted in anger. But Tay was already walking out of the hall. He had given his opinion. Now it was time for the politicians to decide. The debate lasted 6 hours. It was fierce and loud. Some said humanity could not afford to fight. Others said humanity could not afford to stay silent. In the end, the vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. That night, Admiral Tay sent a message to every ship in the human fleet. The message was short. The Volari are our friends. They are in danger. We leave in 72 hours. Prepare for war. Across human space, soldiers and pilots and engineers received the order. They left their homes and their families. They boarded their ships. They checked their weapons. They said goodbye to the people they loved. No one forced them to go. Every single one of them volunteered. Because humanity remembered what the Volari had done for them. And humanity always paid its debts. Far away, on the burning surface of Velar Prime, Elder Veth sat in a dark cave surrounded by frightened refugees. He did not know if anyone had heard his message. He did not know if help was coming. But somewhere in his old heart, he held on to hope. He remembered the humans he had met long ago. He remembered their strange eyes, full of fire and determination. He remembered how they never gave up, even when everything seemed lost. Maybe, he thought, maybe they will come. He closed his eyes and waited. Part 2. The gathering storm, the word spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Every news channel, every radio station, every social media platform carried the same story. The Volari were dying. The Galactic Council refused to help. And humanity was going to war. In the shipyards of Mars, workers began loading weapons onto warships. In the training camps of Earth, soldiers packed their bags and said goodbye to their families. In the hospitals and medical centers, doctors prepared supplies for the wounded they knew would come. Admiral Kan Tay stood in the command center of the flagship Aurora, watching his fleet come together. Ships arrived every hour, jumping out of hyperspace and taking their positions. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and battleships. 150 vessels in total. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever gathered. It was still only half the size of the Drath force at Velar Prime. Tay did not care about the numbers. He had fought against worse odds before. What mattered was the will to fight, and humanity had that in abundance. Captain Wuhana arrived on the second day. She commanded the battleship Indomitable, one of the largest and most powerful ships in the human fleet. Hana was 45 years old, with short black hair and calm eyes that hid a fierce temper. She had served under Tay for 15 years. She trusted him with her life. "Admiral," she said as she entered the command center, "the Indomitable is ready. My crew is ready. Just give us a target." Tay nodded. "The target is the Drath fleet. 300 warships. We hit them hard and fast. No mercy, no retreat." Hana smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had found her prey. "Understood, sir." On the lower decks of the Aurora, Lieutenant Commander Park Jin supervised the loading of weapons. Jin was a thin man with quick hands and sharp eyes. He was the best boarding specialist in the fleet. When ships needed to be captured, he led the teams that fought through enemy corridors. He checked the inventory as crates were carried past him. Plasma rifles, kinetic pistols, combat knives, grenades. And something else. Something the other species of the galaxy considered too brutal to use. Kinetic accelerators. Weapons that fired small metal slugs at incredible speeds. No shields could stop them. No armor could block them. They punched through walls and bodies with equal ease. The Galactic Council had tried to ban these weapons years ago. Humanity had refused. "Are we really bringing those?" asked one of the young soldiers helping with the loading. Jin looked at her. She was barely 20 years old, fresh from training. Her name was Mira, and she had never seen real combat. "The Drath have killed thousands of innocent people," Jin said quietly. "They have destroyed an entire civilization. And you want me to fight them with something gentle?" Myra had no answer. Jin returned to his work. On Earth, General Big Sue prepared the ground forces. Sue was a small woman with gray-streaked hair and a reputation for being impossible to defeat. She had fought in the border wars of 2301. She had led the defense of Colony 7 when raiders attacked. She had never lost a battle in 30 years of service. Now she stood before a room full of the best soldiers humanity had to offer. They sat in silence, watching her with focused eyes. "Listen carefully," Sue said. "This will not be an easy fight. The Drath are strong. They are cruel. They have occupied Villa Prime and are using civilian hostages as shields. Our job is to take back that planet and save as many lives as possible." She pointed to a map on the wall behind her. It showed the capital city of Velar Prime, now mostly ruins. Colonel Yongdae will lead the armored divisions. You will push through the northern districts and draw the enemy's attention. She pointed to a large man sitting in the front row. They nodded once, his face like stone. "Major Nari will lead the special operations teams. You will use the underground tunnels to reach the prison camps where the Valari are being held." She pointed to a woman with sharp features and cold eyes. Nari did not nod or speak. She simply watched. "And Sergeant Q will provide support from high ground. You will target enemy commanders and heavy weapons." She pointed to a quiet man sitting in the back corner. Q was older than the others, with steady hands and a face that showed no emotion. He was the best sniper in the entire military. He had not missed a shot in 15 years. "Questions?" Sue asked. No one spoke. They knew what they had to do. Far away, in the Drath Collective's territory, the warlord Gorin received news of the human fleet. He sat on his command throne, surrounded by his officers, and listened as a scout delivered the report. 150 human ships, my lord. They are gathering near their home system. Our spies say they plan to attack Villa Prime. Gorin laughed. It was a deep, ugly sound that echoed through the chamber. "Humans," he said. "Little creatures with soft skin and short lives. They have only been in space for 300 years. We have conquered empires older than their entire species." His officers laughed with him. "Let them come," Gorin continued. "It will be amusing to crush them. Perhaps we will keep some as slaves. I hear they can work long hours without rest." More laughter filled the room. The warlord leaned back in his throne. "Send a message to their fleet. Tell them to turn back. Tell them this is not their war. and tell them what will happen if they refuse. The message reached Admiral Tay on the third day, just as the human fleet was preparing to leave. The Drath warlord appeared on the screen, his massive form covered in battle armor, his face twisted in arrogance. "Little predators," Goran said. "I am Warlord Goran of the Drath Collective. Turn your ships around and go home. The Valari belong to us now. They will serve us until we decide they are no longer useful. If you interfere, we will destroy your fleet, and then we will come for your worlds. Your children will grow up as our slaves. Your planets will burn. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Turn back. This is your only warning." The message ended. The command center was silent. Tay stood motionless for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Send a response," he said calmly. "What should I say, sir?" Tay thought for a moment. Then he gave a small, cold smile. "Send him coordinates and a timestamp. The coordinates are the location of his flagship. The timestamp is 3 days from now." The officer's eyes widened, but he obeyed. The message was sent. Across the fleet, soldiers heard what their admiral had done. They smiled. They checked their weapons one more time. They said quiet prayers or wrote final letters to their loved ones. The waiting was over. Admiral Tay stood at the front of the command center and activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice reached every ship, every soldier, every pilot. "We are going to fight an enemy that believes they are superior to us. They believe we are weak because we are young. They believe we will run because we are small. They believe we will fail because we are few." He paused. "They are wrong." The fleet began to move. 150 ships pointed their noses toward the darkness of space. The Valari saved our people when we were dying. They asked for nothing in return. Now they need us. And we will be there for them, no matter the cost. The engines roared to life. Stars stretched into lines as the ships entered hyperspace. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. The fleet vanished into the void. 3 days later, they would arrive at Velar Prime, and the universe would never look at humanity the same way again. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace behind the largest moon of Velar Prime. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the sensors activated, and the screens filled with horror. Admiral Kang Tay stood at the center of the command bridge, watching the images that appeared before him. 300 Drath warships surrounded the planet like hungry wolves around a dying deer. Their weapons fired constantly, sending beams of destruction down to the surface below. From orbit, he could see the fires burning across entire continents. The Valari defense fleet was nothing but debris. Broken ships floated in the darkness, twisted metal and shattered glass. There were no survivors. "Admiral," said the tactical officer, "the enemy has noticed us. They are turning their ships toward our position." Tay nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Drath would not run. They would fight. "How many ships are moving toward us?" "All of them, sir. All 300. Captain Wuhana's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, the Indomitable is ready. My weapons are hot. Just give the word." Tay looked at the enemy fleet one more time. 300 against 150. The mathematics were simple. They were outnumbered 2-1. By any normal calculation, they should retreat. They should run away and save themselves. But humanity had not come to run. Tay opened a channel to every ship in the fleet. His voice was calm and steady, the voice of a man who had made peace with what was about to happen. "The Valari asked for help," he said. "They are our friends. They saved our people when we were dying. Now they are dying, and we are here." He paused. "The enemy is strong. The enemy is many. But we are not afraid. We are humanity. And today, we show the galaxy what that means." He took a breath. All ships. Weapons free. Attack. The battle began. Human ships surged forward like arrows from a bow. They did not form defensive lines like other species did. They did not wait for the enemy to come to them. They charged straight into the heart of the Drath formation, weapons blazing. The Drath were surprised. They had fought many species in their long history. Most enemies tried to protect themselves first. Most enemies were careful. Most enemies were afraid. Humans were none of these things. Captain Hana drove the Indomitable through the center of the enemy fleet. Her ship was massive, one of the largest in the human navy. Its armor was thick. Its weapons were powerful. And its crew was hungry for battle. "Target that carrier on the left," she ordered. Full kinetic barrage. The Indomitable shook as its guns fired. Hundreds of metal slugs raced across space at incredible speed. They punched through the Drath carrier's shields like paper. They tore through its armor like butter. The carrier exploded in a ball of fire. "Target destroyed," reported the weapons officer. "Acquiring next target." "Keep firing," Hana said. "Don't stop until they're all dead or we are." Across the battlefield, other human ships followed her example. Destroyers weaved between enemy vessels, firing missiles at point-blank range. Cruisers formed hunting packs, surrounding larger Drath ships and tearing them apart from multiple angles. Fighters swarmed like angry insects, finding weak spots in enemy armor. The Drath fought back. They had powerful weapons and experienced crews. Human ships began to take damage. Human ships began to die. The destroyer Braveheart was hit by a concentrated beam attack. It split in two, both halves spinning away into the darkness. 120 crew members lost. The cruiser Silver Star took a missile to its engine section. It drifted, helpless, as 3 Drath ships moved in to finish it. The captain ordered all power to weapons. They kept firing until the ship exploded. But for every human ship destroyed, 3 Drath vessels fell. Humanity was paying a heavy price, but the enemy was paying more. Lieutenant Commander Park Jin watched the battle from the assault carrier Thunder. His boarding teams were ready. They wore heavy armor and carried kinetic rifles. Their faces were grim and determined. "Commander," said the pilot, "we have a target. The Drath command ship. Admiral Tay wants it captured if possible." Jin looked at the enemy vessel on his screen. It was huge, 10 times the size of his carrier. Taking it would require fighting through hundreds of enemy soldiers. The odds of survival were low. He smiled. "Take us in," he said. "Fast and hard. We hit them before they know what's happening." The Thunder accelerated toward the command ship. Drath guns tried to shoot it down, but the pilot was skilled. She weaved through the fire, dodging beams and missiles with desperate precision. When they were close enough, Jin gave the order. "Launch boarding pods." "Go! Go! Go!" Small metal capsules shot from the carrier and slammed into the command ship's hull. They punched through the armor and opened, releasing human soldiers into the enemy vessel. Jin was first through the breach. He fired his rifle before his feet touched the ground. 3 Drath soldiers fell before they could react. His team poured in behind him, spreading out and taking cover. The fighting was brutal. The corridors were narrow and dark. The Drath were larger than humans, stronger than humans. But humans were faster. Humans were meaner. And humans did not know how to surrender. The battle lasted 3 hours. By the end, Jin's team had lost half their numbers. But they had taken the command center. They had captured the enemy commander. And they had planted the human flag in the heart of a Drath ship. Jin stood over the captured commander, breathing heavily. His armor was cracked. His rifle was empty. He had killed the last 5 enemies with his combat knife. This ship belongs to humanity now, he said. The Drath commander looked at him with something new in his eyes. It was not anger. It was not hate. It was fear. Back in space, the battle reached its peak. Admiral Tay watched as his fleet traded death with the enemy. The numbers were terrible. He had lost 40 ships already. Thousands of humans were dead or dying. But the Drath had lost more. Their fleet was breaking apart. Their formation was chaos. For the first time in centuries, they were losing. Warlord Garen's voice came through the communication system, filled with rage. "Why do you fight so hard?" he demanded. "Why do you die for these weak creatures? The Valaria nothing. They have no army. They have no power. Why would you sacrifice so much for them?" Admiral Tay answered him calmly. "Because they are our friends, and we do not abandon our friends." The battle raged for 12 hours. History would call it the 12-hour storm. It would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. By the 8th hour, the Drath were in full retreat. Their ships turned and ran, jumping to hyperspace in desperate attempts to escape. The humans did not let them go easily. They chased them, hunted them, destroyed them until the last enemy vessel vanished from sensors. By the 12th hour, it was over. The human fleet had lost 60 ships. 4,000 sailors were dead. Many more were wounded. But the Drath fleet was broken. Half their ships were destroyed. Their command vessel was captured. Their famous warlord was fleeing back to his home system. Captain Hannah's voice came through the communication system. She was alive. The Indomitable was badly damaged, burning in several places, but still flying. "Admiral," she said, "the space is clear. Vila Prime is free." Tay closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of all the people who had died. He thought of all the families that would receive terrible news. He thought of the price humanity had paid. Then he opened his eyes and looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there, the Valari were waiting. They were still in danger. The Drath ground forces still occupied their cities. "Signal the ground forces," Tay said. "Tell General Sue to begin the landing. The space battle is over." He paused. "Now, we take back their world." The first drop ships fell through the atmosphere of Velar Prime like metal rain. They burned bright against the gray sky, leaving trails of fire as they descended. Inside each ship, soldiers sat in silence, checking their weapons one last time. General Beak Sue was on the first ship to touch ground. She stepped out onto the broken streets of the Valari capital city, her boots crunching on shattered glass and fallen stone. The air smelled of smoke and death. Buildings that once stood tall and beautiful were now ruins. Bodies lay in the streets, covered by thin blankets or nothing at all. She had seen war before. She had seen destruction before. But this was different. This was not a battlefield. This was a massacre. "General," said her aide, a young lieutenant named Han, "our forces are landing at all designated points. Colonel Day reports his armor is ready to move." Sue nodded. "Tell him to begin the advance. Northern districts first. I want the Drath pushed back before they can organize." Across the city, Colonel Yong Day stood on top of his command tank. He was a big man with a loud voice and a simple approach to warfare. "Hit hard. Move fast. Never stop. All units," he said into his radio. "Advance. Crush anything in your path." The armored column began to move. Tanks rolled through the destroyed streets, their guns searching for targets. Infantry followed behind, using the vehicles as cover. The Drath were waiting for them. Enemy soldiers appeared on rooftops and in windows, firing down at the advancing humans. These tanks returned fire immediately, blowing apart buildings and silencing the enemy positions. But the Drath were many, and they knew the city well. The fighting was slow and bloody. Every street was a battle. Every building was a fortress. The humans pushed forward step by step, paying for every meter with blood. Private Hayo was 19 years old. She had joined the army 6 months ago, hoping to see the galaxy and have adventures. Now she crouched behind a burning vehicle, bullets flying over her head, watching her friends die. "Move!" screamed her sergeant. "We have to keep moving." Hayo forced herself to stand. She ran forward, firing her rifle without really aiming. A Drath soldier appeared in front of her, huge and terrifying. She shot him in the chest 3 times. He fell. She kept running. On the other side of the city, Major Nari led her special operations teams into the underground tunnels. These tunnels had once been used by the Volari for transportation and storage. Now they were filled with refugees trying to hide from the Drath. Nari moved in silence, her team following close behind. They wore special suits that absorbed sound and masked their heat signatures. They were ghosts in the darkness. "Contact ahead," whispered one of her soldiers. "Draft patrol. 6 targets." Nari held up her hand, signaling the team to stop. She studied the enemy position. The Drath soldiers were standing guard at a tunnel junction. Behind them, she could see a large door. That door led to the main prison complex where thousands of Volari were being held. "Take them quietly," she ordered. "No guns, knives only." Her team spread out. They approached the enemy from 3 directions at once. When Nari gave the signal, they struck. It was over in seconds. 6 Drath soldiers lay dead on the ground. Not one of them had made a sound. Nari approached the door. It was locked with a heavy electronic system. She placed a small device against it and waited. After a moment, the lock clicked open. "Move in," she said. "Secure the prisoners. Kill any Drath you find." The team entered the prison complex. What they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Thousands of Volari were packed into small cells. They were thin and weak from lack of food. Many were injured. Some were dead, their bodies still lying among the living. Children cried in the darkness. Old ones sat with empty eyes, waiting for death. "Oh no," whispered one of the soldiers. "What did they do to them?" Nari felt her harden. She had always been a professional soldier, doing her job without emotion. But seeing this changed something inside her. "Free them," she said, her voice cold. "Free them all. And if any Drath try to stop you, make them pay." High above the city, on top of a collapsed temple, Sergeant Q lay perfectly still. His sniper rifle rested on a pile of broken stones. His eye was pressed against the scope. His breathing was slow and steady. He had been in position for 3 hours. In that time, he had killed 17 Drath officers. Each shot was perfect. Each target fell without warning. Their soldiers were left confused and leaderless. Now he saw his next target. A Drath commander was standing in a courtyard, shouting orders at his troops. He was surrounded by bodyguards, but that did not matter. Q had a clear shot. He squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled across the city in less than a second. It passed between 2 buildings, over a group of fighting soldiers, and through the gap between 2 bodyguards. It struck the commander in the center of his forehead. He was dead before he hit the ground. Q moved his scope to find the next target. In his command post, the Drath ground commander received terrible news. His officers were dying one by one. His soldiers were being pushed back on every front. The underground prisons were being liberated. The battle was slipping away from him. His name was Threk. He was known for his cruelty and his intelligence. He had conquered 12 worlds for the collective. He had never been defeated. Until now, Threk made a decision. If he could not win, he would make the humans pay for their victory. He sent a message to all communication channels, making sure the humans would hear it. Attention, human forces. I am Commander Threk of the Drath Collective. For every hour you continue your attack, I will execute 1,000 Valari prisoners. Stop your advance immediately, or their blood will be on your hands. The message reached General Sue as she directed the battle from her mobile command post. She listened to it with a blank face. Her officers watched her nervously, waiting for her response. "General," said Lieutenant Han, "what should we do? If we stop, the Drath will reinforce their positions. But if we continue..." Sue thought of the prisoners. She thought of the innocent Valari who would die if she made the wrong choice. For a moment, she almost ordered her forces to stop. Then she thought of something else. She thought of what would happen if the Drath won. Every Valari on the planet would die or become a slave. There would be no rescue. There would be no hope. Sometimes, victory required sacrifice. "Tell all units to double their speed," she said quietly. "We reach the prison complexes in 6 hours instead of 12. We save as many as we can." "But General, they'll start killing. I know what they'll do." Sue's voice was hard. "And I know what they'll do if we stop. Move faster. End this faster. It's the only way." The order went out. The human forces attacked with renewed fury. They no longer fought carefully. They threw themselves at the enemy with desperate energy. Losses increased. Soldiers fell by the hundreds. But they moved fast, faster than anyone thought possible. 6 hours later, General Sue stood in the courtyard where Commander Threk had made his threats. The Drath commander knelt before her, his hands bound, his face covered in blood. The humans had arrived in time to save most of the prisoners. Not all of them. Threk had killed 3,000 Valari before they broke through. 3,000 innocent people who would never see the sunrise again. Sue looked down at the monster who had ordered their deaths. "You thought we would stop," she said. "You thought we would be weak. You were wrong." Threk looked up at her. For the first time in his life, he understood fear. "What are you?" he whispered. Sue did not answer. She turned and walked away, leaving him to face human justice. The battle for Vela Prime was over. The ground war was won. But the cost was high. So very high. The silence after battle is different from any other silence. It is heavy and sad, filled with ghosts. Captain Wuhana opened her eyes slowly. Everything hurt. She was lying in a medical bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. Her body was wrapped in bandages. She could not feel her left leg. A doctor stood beside her, checking the machines. When he saw she was awake, he smiled gently. "Captain," he said, "welcome back. You've been unconscious for 3 days." Hannah tried to speak, but her throat was dry. The doctor gave her water. She drank slowly, then tried again. "My ship," she whispered. "The Indomitable." "What happened?" The doctor's smile faded slightly. "Your ship is still there, but it will never fly again. The damage was too severe." Hannah closed her eyes. The Indomitable had been her home for 15 years. She had raised her crew like family. Now her home was a broken shell floating in space. "The crew?" she asked. 63% survived. The others? The doctor did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Hannah lay still, letting the numbers wash over her. 63%. That meant 37% were dead. More than 200 people who had trusted her, followed her, believed in her. Gone. She remembered the battle. She remembered driving her ship through the enemy formation. She remembered the explosions, the fires, the screams over the radio. She remembered taking hit after hit, refusing to retreat, refusing to stop fighting. She remembered nothing after that. You saved the ship, the doctor said quietly. When the bridge took a direct hit, you were thrown across the room. 17 broken bones. Internal bleeding. Brain swelling. We almost lost you. He paused. But your last order saved the remaining crew. You told them to seal the damaged sections and keep fighting. They did. Hannah turned her head and looked out the window. She could see Velar Prime below, blue and green and beautiful. A planet that was free because she and her crew had paid the price. It was worth it, she said softly. It had to be worth it. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Wounded soldiers woke up in hospital beds, asking about friends and comrades. Sometimes the answers were good. Often they were not. Lieutenant Commander Park Jin sat beside the bed of a young soldier named Myra. She was the one who had questioned the kinetic accelerators before the battle. Now she lay unconscious, her face pale, tubes running into her arms. During the boarding action, she had saved Jin's life. A Drath soldier had attacked him from behind. Mira shot the enemy, but not before taking a blade to her stomach. She had kept fighting for another hour before collapsing from blood loss. Jin held her hand and waited. The doctor said she would probably survive. Probably. It was not a word he liked. You did good, he said quietly, even though she could not hear him. You did really good. On the surface of Velar Prime, the sun rose over a broken city. Human soldiers walked through the streets, helping the wounded, collecting the dead. The battle was over, but the work was just beginning. General Biksu stood on a hill overlooking the capital. She had not slept in 4 days. Her uniform was dirty and torn. Her face showed every year of her age. Colonel Day approached and stood beside her. Final count is in, he said. We lost 4,022 soldiers. Ground forces. Another 6,000 wounded. Some will never fight again. Sue did not respond immediately. She just looked at the city below. And the Velari? She asked. Hard to say. Maybe 2 million dead during the occupation. Another 300,000 in the final battle. But we saved many more. At least 10 million are still alive because of us. 2 million dead. Sue tried to imagine that number. 2 million mothers and fathers and children. 2 million stories ended too soon. It was too big to understand. It wasn't enough, she said. We should have come sooner. We came as soon as we could. Any sooner, and we wouldn't have been ready. We might have lost. Sue knew he was right. But knowing did not make it easier. In the ruins of the capital, Elder Veth walked slowly through the streets. He was old, much older than he had been when he sent his desperate message to the stars. The past weeks had aged him terribly. He had watched his people die. He had hidden in caves while his world burned. He had prayed for help, not really believing it would come. But it had come. A human soldier helped him over a pile of rubble. She was young, barely old enough to fight. Her armor was dented and burned. She had probably been in battle just hours ago, but she took the time to help an old man walk. Thank you, Beth said. The soldier smiled. That's why we're here, sir. To help. Veth continued walking until he reached a clearing. A group of human officers stood there, along with several Velari leaders who had survived the occupation. In the center stood a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Admiral Kang Tae. Veth approached him slowly. The admiral turned to face him. For a long moment, neither spoke. They just looked at each other. Two old men who had seen too much. Two leaders who carried the weight of their peoples on their shoulders. Then Veth bowed his head. You came, he said, his voice breaking. We called for help, and you came. Tae stepped forward and placed his hands on the elder's shoulders. Of course we came, he said. Did you think we would forget what you did for us? Tears began to fall from Veth's eyes. He had held them back for so long. He had been strong for his people, strong for the survivors, strong for everyone who looked to him for hope. But now, standing before this human who had crossed the galaxy to save them, he could not hold back anymore. "So many of your people died," Veth whispered. "So many gave their lives for us. Why? We have nothing to offer you. We are not warriors. We cannot repay this debt." Tay shook his head. "There is no debt," he said firmly. "When your people came to Earth, you did not ask for payment. You did not ask for anything. You helped us because we needed help. That is all." "That's all." He paused. "And that is all we ask in return. Nothing. Just live, rebuild, be happy. That is enough." Veth looked up at him with wonder in his eyes. "I have lived for 200 years, he said. "I have met many species, learned many languages, studied many cultures. But I have never met a people like yours." Tay smiled sadly. "We are not perfect," he said. "We have done terrible things in our history. We have hurt each other. We have destroyed each other. We know darkness very well." He looked at the burning city around them. "But we also know light. We know loyalty. We know love. And when our friends call for help, we answer." Veth clasped the Admiral's hands in his own. "Then perhaps," he said slowly, "the universe is lucky to have you." That night, fires burned across Vilar Prime. Not fires of destruction, but fires of memorial. Humans and Valari gathered together, lighting candles for the dead. They spoke the names of those they had lost. They shared stories and memories. They cried together. General Su stood beside Major Nari, watching the flames. "Was it worth it?" Nari asked quietly. "All those lives, all that sacrifice, was it worth it?" Su thought about the question for a long time. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know if I'll ever know. But I know one thing." She looked at the Valari families around them, holding each other, alive because humans had fought and died for them. "I know that those people are free tonight because we came. I know that children will grow up and have families because we didn't look away." She turned to face Nari. "Maybe that's worth it. Maybe that's all the worth we need." Nari nodded slowly. Above them, the stars shone bright and cold. The universe continued turning, indifferent to the suffering below. But on one small planet, two species stood together in the darkness, united by sacrifice and bound by hope. And that was something new. That was something the universe had never seen before. News travels fast in the galaxy. It travels through communication networks, through merchant ships, through whispered conversations in spaceports across 1,000 worlds. Within days of the battle, everyone knew what had happened at Vila Prime. The Galactic Council gathered for an emergency session. Representatives from 30 species sat in the great circular chamber, watching recordings from the battle. They saw human ships charging into overwhelming odds. They saw soldiers fighting through streets filled with fire and death. They saw the Drath fleet, the terror of the galaxy, broken and running. The chamber was silent. Ambassador Yuna stood at the speaker's platform, facing the council. She was the same woman who had received the Valari distress call all those weeks ago. Now she stood as humanity's voice before the galaxy. "You have seen what happened," she said calmly. "You have seen what humanity did. We answered a call for help. We fought an enemy that everyone else feared. We won." An ambassador from the Crick species raised his hand. The Cricks were an old race, known for their caution and their survival instincts. "The human fleet was outnumbered 2-1, he said. "Your losses were significant. Why would you take such a risk for a species that could offer you nothing in return?" Yuna looked at him steadily. "Because they were our friends," she said. "Because they helped us when we were dying. Because it was the right thing to do. She paused. Is that really so hard to understand? The Crick's ambassador had no answer. Another representative spoke up. This one was from the Vorn Collective, a species known for their business interests and practical thinking. The Drath will seek revenge, he warned. They will not forget this humiliation. By attacking them, you have made enemies of the most powerful military in the known galaxy. Was that wise? Yuna smiled. It was not a warm smile. The Drath attacked an innocent species, she said. They killed millions of peaceful people. They would have enslaved the rest. And this council did nothing. Her voice grew harder. You sat in this chamber and voted for neutrality. You watched the Valari burn and you did nothing. And now you want to lecture us about wisdom? The chamber fell silent again. Yuna turned to address all of them. Humanity is not afraid of the Drath. We are not afraid of anyone who attacks innocents. If the Drath want revenge, they can come and try. We will be waiting for them. She stepped back from the platform. This is humanity's message to the galaxy. We will defend any ally who asks for help. We will fight any aggressor who targets our friends. This is not a threat. This is a promise. She walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the council erupted in noise. In the Drath home system, the mood was very different. The Emperor sat on his throne, surrounded by his advisors and generals. His face was a mask of cold fury. Warlord Goran knelt before him, his head bowed in shame. You lost half the fleet, the Emperor said slowly. Half of our greatest weapons. Destroyed by a species that has been in space for only 3 centuries. Explain this to me. Goran swallowed hard. They fought without fear, he said. They charged directly into our formation. No defensive tactics. No careful maneuvering. Just pure aggression. He paused. We were not prepared for such madness. Madness, the Emperor repeated. You call it madness. I call it something else. He leaned forward on his throne. I call it dangerous. He stood and walked to a window that overlooked his capital city. Millions of Drath lived below, secure in their belief that the Empire was invincible. That belief had just been shattered. My advisors tell me we should launch a full attack on human space, the Emperor said. They want to punish humanity for this insult. They want to show the galaxy that no one challenges the collective. Goran looked up hopefully. I can lead the attack myself, my Emperor. I will redeem my failure. The Emperor turned back to face him. You will do nothing, he said coldly. You have shown that you do not understand this enemy. He sat back on his throne. My intelligence officers have been studying humanity since the battle. Do you know what they found? Goran shook his head. They found a species that has been at war with itself for most of its history. They fight each other constantly. They have created weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They have bombed their own cities, poisoned their own lands, slaughtered their own people by the millions. The Emperor's voice grew quiet. And yet they survive. They always survive. They rebuild. They grow stronger. They never give up. He fixed Goran with a hard stare. These are not rational creatures. They are not careful or cautious. They are driven by emotions we do not fully understand. Loyalty, honor, love. He waved his hand dismissively. Our fleet will withdraw to core systems. We will not attack human space. Not now. Not until we understand how to defeat them without losing everything. Goran could not believe what he was hearing. My Emperor, if we show weakness now, the other species will. The other species are already talking, the Emperor interrupted. They see what happened. They see that we can be beaten. The damage is done. He turned away. Leave me. I must think about how to deal with this new threat. Goran bowed and retreated from the chamber, shame burning in his heart. Across the galaxy, the news continued to spread. Species that had been conquered by the Drath heard about the battle and felt something they had not felt in centuries. Hope on the prison world of Keth. Drath slaves whispered to each other about the strange aliens who had defeated their masters. On the mining colonies of the Outer Rim, workers looked up at the stars and wondered if help might someday come for them too. And in the darkest corners of Drath space, resistance movements that had been crushed long ago began to stir once more. Humanity had not just won a battle. They had changed something fundamental about the galaxy. They had shown that the Drath could be defeated. They had proven that standing up for the weak was possible. Back at Vela Prime, the human fleet remained in orbit. Reinforcements arrived daily, bringing fresh ships and supplies. Admiral Tay had made a decision. Humanity would not leave until the Valari were safe. Engineers began building a permanent defense station in orbit. Ground troops established bases across the planet. Medical ships from Earth brought doctors and medicine to heal the wounded. The Valari watched with amazement as humans worked beside them, day after day, asking for nothing in return. Elder Veth spoke to Ambassador Yuna one evening as they watched the sunset from the ruins of his home. "Your people are strange," he said. "You fight with such fury. You kill without hesitation. And yet you heal with such gentleness. You help with such kindness." Yuna nodded slowly. "We contain contradictions," she admitted. "We can be cruel and we can be kind. We can destroy and we can create. It depends on what the situation requires." She turned to face him. "When innocents are threatened, we bring fury. When friends need help, we bring compassion. That is simply who we are." Veth was quiet for a long moment. "The galaxy does not know what to make of you," he said finally. "Some species fear you. Some admire you. Many do not understand you at all." Yuna smiled. "We don't always understand ourselves, but we try to do what's right. That's all anyone can do." She looked up at the stars, now visible in the darkening sky. "The Drath will come back eventually. They don't forgive easily. And there are other threats out there, other empires who prey on the weak. The galaxy is a dangerous place." She stood up and offered her hand to the elder. "But it's a little less dangerous now. Because the weak know something they didn't know before." "What is that?" Veth asked. Yuna's smile widened. "They know that if they call for help, humanity will answer. And we will bring everything we have." She helped him to his feet. "Come on. We have a planet to rebuild." They walked together through the ruins, human and Valari, toward the lights of the rescue camps where their peoples worked side by side. The galaxy was watching, and the galaxy would remember. Vela Prime was no longer a world of ashes and tears. The capital city was rising again, stone by stone, street by street. New buildings stood where ruins had been. Gardens bloomed where blood had soaked the ground. Children played in parks that had once been battlefields. Fleet Marshal Kang Tae walked through the restored central square. He had been promoted twice since the battle, but he still wore his old uniform. He still walked with the same quiet dignity. He still remembered every soldier who had died under his command. Captain Wuhana walked beside him, leaning on a metal cane. Her left leg had been replaced with a mechanical one. The doctor said she could get a better model, one that looked and felt like real flesh. She refused. She wanted to remember what the battle had cost. "Strange, isn't it?" she said, looking around at the rebuilt city. "A year ago, this was all fire and death. Now look at it." Tay nodded slowly. "The Valari are strong," he said. "They don't look like warriors, but they have a different kind of strength. The strength to heal. The strength to hope. The strength to keep going, even after everything has been taken from them." They reached the center of the square, where a large crowd had gathered. Today was a special day. Today, the Valari would dedicate a memorial to those who had fallen in the liberation. Human soldiers stood in neat rows, their uniforms clean and pressed. Valari civilians filled the spaces between them, wearing traditional robes in colors of mourning and gratitude. Elder Veth stood on a raised platform, waiting to speak. Tay and Hannah took their places at the front of the crowd. General Beek Su was not there in person. She had returned to Earth months ago, called back to train a new generation of soldiers. But she had sent a message to be read at the ceremony. A young officer named Han held the paper in his hands, ready to speak her words. Elder Veth raised his hands, and the crowd fell silent. 1 year ago, he began, his voice carrying across the square. Our world was dying. Our people were being slaughtered. Our cities were burning. We had no hope. He paused, looking out at the faces before him. We sent a message into the darkness, a plea for help. We did not know if anyone would hear. We did not know if anyone would care. We had seen the galaxy turn away from other species. We expected the same. His voice grew stronger. But then came the humans. A murmur passed through the Valari crowd. Many of them were crying. Many of them had lost family members in the occupation. All of them owed their lives to the soldiers standing among them. They did not ask for payment. They did not ask for territory. They did not ask for anything except the chance to fight for us. Veth's voice cracked with emotion. 4,000 of them died so that we might live. 4,000 mothers' children. 4,000 fathers' pride. 4,000 stories ended before their time. He turned to face the human soldiers directly. We can never repay this debt. We can only honor it. We can only remember it. We can only teach our children and our children's children about the day the humans came with fire in their hearts and thunder in their hands. He gestured to the center of the square, where a large object stood covered by a white cloth. Today, we dedicate this memorial to those who gave everything. May it stand for 1,000 years. May it remind all who see it that friendship is stronger than fear, and love is stronger than death. He pulled the cloth away. Beneath it stood a statue carved from white stone. It showed two figures standing side by side. One was a Valari elder, tall and thin, with gentle hands and wise eyes. The other was a human soldier, smaller but fierce, holding a rifle in one hand and offering the other in friendship. Their hands were clasped together, joined in unity. At the base of the statue, words were carved in both Valari script and human English. A plea for help was launched. Humanity answered. The crowd erupted in applause. Humans and Valari cheered together, their voices mixing into a single sound of gratitude and joy. Tay stood motionless, looking at the statue. He thought of all the people he had lost. He thought of all the families who would never be whole again. He thought of the price humanity had paid. And he thought of the price they would have paid if they had done nothing. The Valari would be gone. Millions would be dead or enslaved. The Drath would have grown stronger, more confident, more hungry for conquest. By fighting, humanity had saved more than the Valari. They had sent a message to the entire galaxy. A message that said the strong could not always prey on the weak. A message that said someone was watching. Someone was listening. Someone would answer. Hannah nudged him gently with her elbow. "You're thinking too much," she said. "Stop it. This is supposed to be a happy day." Tay smiled slightly. "I was thinking about the future," he said. "The Drath are still out there. Other threats are still out there. This isn't over." "No," Hannah agreed. "It isn't. But whatever comes next, we'll face it the same way we faced this." She looked at the statue, then at the cheering crowd. Together. Lieutenant Han stepped forward to read General Su's message. The crowd quieted to listen. To the soldiers of the Liberation, Han read aloud, and to the people of Valor Prime, I am sorry I cannot be with you today. I am called elsewhere to prepare for whatever challenges lie ahead, but I wanted you to know what I believe. He paused, then continued. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the oldest. We are not the wisest. But when the universe needed fury, we brought it. When our friends needed hope, we became it. That is what humanity is. That is what humanity will always be. Han's voice grew stronger. To those who threaten the innocent, hear this. We are watching. To those who suffer alone, hear this. We are listening. To those who have lost all hope, hear this. Call to us. We will come. No matter how far. No matter how dangerous. We will come with fire and thunder and fury, and we will not stop until our friends are free. He lowered the paper. That is General Sue's message. And that is humanity's promise. The applause returned, louder than before. Valari hugged the human soldiers near them. Old enmities were forgotten. Old fears were washed away. In the crowd, Sergeant Q stood quietly. He had not spoken much since the battle. He had killed many enemies. He had saved many friends. But he did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had done what needed to be done. A young Valari child approached him. She was small and thin, with large eyes that had seen too much suffering for someone her age. Are you a human soldier? She asked. Q nodded. Did you fight in the battle? Yes. The child looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for saving us. Q felt something break inside him. All the walls he had built, all the coldness he had wrapped around his heart, crumbled in an instant. Tears filled his eyes, the first tears he had shed in years. He knelt down so he was at the child's level. You're welcome, he said softly. And if anyone ever threatens you again, call for us. We'll come. The child smiled and hugged him. Q hugged her back, holding on like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Because in that moment, she was. That evening, a celebration filled the streets of the capital. Music played. People danced. Food was shared between species that had been strangers a year ago and were now family. Fleet Marshal Tay stood on a balcony overlooking the festivities. Ambassador Yuna joined him, carrying 2 glasses of Valari wine. You did a good thing, she said, handing him a glass. The galaxy is different because of what you did. Tay took the glass but did not drink. The galaxy is dangerous, he said. There are species out there who think strength is the only thing that matters. They see kindness as weakness. They see mercy as foolishness. And what do you see? Yuna asked. Tay looked down at the celebration below. Humans and Valari laughing together. Children running through the streets without fear. A world that had been dead coming back to life. I see the future, he said. I see what we can build if we stand together. I see what we can become if we refuse to give up on each other. He raised his glass. To the fallen. To the future. To humanity. Yuna raised her glass in return. To the promise we made. And the promise we'll keep. They drank together as the stars came out above them. Somewhere across the galaxy, other species were watching. The weak were finding hope. The strong were learning caution. The cruel were looking toward human space and hesitating. Because humanity had made a promise. And humanity kept its promises. Always. The universe would never forget the day a plea for help was launched into the void. And humanity answered with fury.